is a discrete random variable? Good question, kiddos. A discrete random variable is a variable that can only take certain values in a given range of numbers. For example, if you flip a coin, the number of heads or tails you would get would be considered discrete, as there are only two definite values, heads or tails. The probability of a discrete random variable must be between 0 and 1, and the sum of probabilities adds up to 1. They are usually denoted by a table with x values and the probability of obtaining said x values. If two variables a and b are independent of each other, then the probability of a or b occurring is the sum of the two probabilities. To get the probability of a and b, multiply the two probabilities. The mean of a discrete random variable is referred to as the expected value and is acquired by multiplying each possible value by its probability and taking the sum. The standard deviation of a discrete random variable is the square root of the sum of the difference between x and the mean times the probability of x occurring. We'll now go over number 3 of the 2008 AP Statistics free response questions. A local arcade is hosting a tournament in which contestants play an arcade game with possible scores ranging from 0 to 20. The arcade has set up multiple game tables so that all the contestants can play the game at the same time. Thus, contestant scores are independent. Each contestant's scores will be recorded as he or she finishes, and the contestant with the highest score is the winner. After practicing the game many times, Josephine, one of the contestants, has established the probability distribution of her scores, shown in the table below. Crystal, another contestant, has also practiced many times. The probability distribution for her scores is shown in the table below. Calculate the expected score for each player. So, to get an expected value, you take the x values and multiply by their probabilities and get the sum. So for Josephine, her expected value is 16 times 0.1 plus 17 times 0.3 plus 18 times 0.4 plus 19 times 0.2 to get an expected value of 17.7. For Crystal, we'd go through the same process and get an expected value of also 17.7. B. Suppose that Josephine scores 16 and Crystal scores 17. The difference, Josephine minus Crystal, of their scores is -1. List all combinations of possible scores for Josephine and Crystal that will produce the difference, Josephine minus Crystal, of -1, and calculate the probability for each combination. So the possible combinations that we might have is Josephine getting a score of 16 and Crystal of 17, Josephine 17 and Crystal 18, or Josephine 18 and Crystal 19. The probability of the first combination occurring, Josephine 16 and Crystal 17, is the probability of Josephine getting a 16 times the probability of Crystal getting a 17. So that's 0.1 times 0.45 equals 0.045. We do the same for the other two probabilities and get a probability of 0.12 of Josephine getting a 17 and Crystal getting an 18, and 0.06 of Josephine getting an 18 and Crystal getting a 19. C. Find the probability that the difference, Josephine minus Crystal, in their scores is -1. So in part B, we already take the individual probabilities of all the combinations that might get a difference of -1. So all we have to do is add them up. So 0.045 plus 0.12 plus 0.06 equals 0.225. D. The table below lists all possible differences in scores between Josephine and Crystal and some associated probabilities. Complete the table and calculate the probability that Crystal's score will be higher than Josephine's score. So we already know the probability of getting a difference of -1 from part C, so we just put that in, 0.225. And to find the probability of getting a difference of -2, we simply subtract from 1 all of the probabilities of the other events occurring. So we get a probability of 0.085 for the probability that Crystal's score will be higher than Josephine's score. We take the probabilities of all the differences that are negative, meaning that Crystal has a higher score than Josephine, and add those up. Calculator usage. On a TI-84 and a TI-89, go to the Stats List Editor tab and under List 1, enter the X values. Under List 2, list the probabilities. Under Stat on a TI-84 and F4 on a TI-89, select one variable stats and under List, type in List 1. For frequency, type List 2 and leave the rest of the lines empty. Press Enter and the window that pops up will give you the mean and standard deviation among other variables. AP Exam Tips and Tricks. On the AP exam, these questions are usually simple and straightforward. Just make sure not to overthink it. Cautions and common mistakes. The equation for standard deviation is normally denoted by the variance, so be sure to square root the variance to get the standard deviation. Otherwise, questions should be fairly simple.